This podcast is brought to you by Radio 786.
Demonstrations in front of the offices of the South African Hajj and Umrah Council as they face allegations from the founding member, the Sunni Jamiatul Ulama and others, of monopolising the Hajj and the Umrah industry. This after SAHUC had claimed, even on this programme, about 2-3 weeks back, that due to new directives from the Saudi Hajj Ministry, that they now be tasked with matters of administrating the Hajj. There were some debates about the type of platform that can be used, whether that means that an individual can apply to the platform to be able to attain a visa and then perform the Hajj, which of course there were differing opinions on that, and at the moment it would appear that at least among 3 different major cities you have protests at SAHUC offices calling for transparency and accountability. Let's try and understand what on earth is happening here. Let's now welcome Jakes Rawat. He is from Hajj Watch, the chairperson, representing the Sunni Jamiat Ulama is its executive member, Moulana Mohammed Tariq, as well as Ambassador Ebrahim Rasool, who chaired a ministerial committee on the efficient management of the annual Hajj and Umrah pilgrimages. They all now join me on the line. Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us here on Radio 786. Now, we have invited the South African Hajj and Umrah Council to join the discussions, but they feel that, since they are being taken to court and the matter is being litigated, that it's best for them to not participate in this panel discussion, which of course is unfortunate, but you are most welcome to share your perspectives via the WhatsApp line on 0786 10 11 12. Let's start off with Moulana Mohammed Tariq. Assalamu alaikum to you, from the Sunni Jamiat Ulama, an executive member. Is it correct that the Sunni Jamiat had, of course, been one of the founding members of what we understand to be SAHUC, and even before we get into the directive and whether there is a directive that gives SAHUC the right to administer the Hajj and facilitate pilgrims in the way that operators would have, I'd like to understand, since you, of course, were a founding member, what was the basis upon which SAHUC was formed, and as we were then a founding member, what did you think the purpose and the role of SAHUC was? Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to the brothers in the panel and also to our listeners of Voice of Cape. Jazakallah for the opportunity for SJU to be representative on this panel. And as I can see, you have many of substance on the panel that can add a lot of value to this, and that's what we look forward for. The SJU was one of the founding members of SAHUC, and I think at that time when we joined as founding members, all the other countries had a facilitator and a regulator, and South Africa didn't have one. And at that time, the intention that they brought to us is when we were wanting to form this year, it was obviously merely and solely on a regulator basis. If I define the regulator basis, was basically a facilitator in terms of there's so much more that people of South Africa that are performing Hajj will be able to benefit from this. At that time, the SJU spoke to its affiliate and organizations, and our mandate and directive was, yes, that we should be part of this formation and we should give the full support for this year, because as we are a body of theologians, Hajj directly implicates with the pillar of Islam, and we should add value onto this and we should be represented on this. So our involvement was merely that we joined SAHUC on a regulator basis and we joined SAHUC as a facilitator, and that is how we've maintained our membership. And we were obviously one of the first organizations amongst all that came out boldly to say yes, that we will be part of the formation and be part of SAHUC. So that's where our intention was, and our mandate was given at that time to join basically. And we had the likes of some of the ulama that are obviously late, and Allah grant them Jannah, like the late Moulana Faisal Khan from Tonga, who was obviously representing the SJU at that time when SAHUC was being formed, etc., and brought vital information to us and convinced the entire body that yes, we should be part of this initiative that SAHUC is doing. And that's how even the part of the naming also, South African Hajj and Umrah Council, was obviously then adapted, and SJU became a very strong member on this in the formation of SAHUC.
Okay, then, and against that backdrop, Ambassador Ebrahim Rasool, I'd like to welcome you in at this juncture. Thank you very much for your time as well. What role, if any, does government play in this particular, let's call it a special dispensation that exists, in which, of course, you have pilgrims that undertake a Hajj, which, we're not in a Muslim country that has a dedicated service, for instance, a government service, to this function, though government has in part, in some way or the other, have had knowledge about what the role it could potentially play. And so there's been this contestation also about government's interpretation about its responsibility, and you've done some work on this particular front. In so doing, I suppose you also, needed to deal with that backdrop that Moulana Mohammed Tariq, of course, had highlighted now, the backdrop around the formation of SAHUC and what is understood to be by SAHUC's representation of South African pilgrims, and using that particular foundation then, what according to you is government's understanding about its role and function here? Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah to you, Tashriq, and to Moulana, as well as Brother Jakes, and to the listeners of 786. I want to say that this is a very important conversation, and the role of government is absolutely critical. I think we all understand it. We have engaged with the Ministry of Hajj in Saudi Arabia, I've engaged with right up to then Prince Salman and the governor of Mecca, and so forth. And they have always wanted a relationship, particularly with government, because technically a Pilgrims Affairs Office is an office of government. The difficulty in South Africa was that the government in South Africa was a secular government, so they did not want to be seen to be interfering in the religious affairs of a particular community if they, for example, don't do that for all other communities. Where we then, as a ministerial committee, came in was to clarify what are the different issues involved in Hajj. So there are the religious issues that, as Moulana says, that relate to the fifth pillar of Islam, and that is the domain of Muslims and their scholars who interpret what must be done, and government has no say in how it is to be done and what is to be done, etc., etc. So you can't, as a government, transgress onto the religious affairs of a particular community. But because Hajj involves overseas travels, government does have a responsibility for consular affairs, meaning that it has to facilitate the travel of any South African, even if that South Africa were to be a criminal overseas. Consular affairs kicks in to provide consular services to anyone who travels overseas. So that is not a religious intervention, it is a consular intervention. The third thing that we believe that, for example, the Commission for Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Affairs needs to sort out would be the issues when it comes to the consumer rights of those Muslims who perform Hajj and Umrah. Meaning that if there are moral hazards in the way in which they are treated, then we need to be able to say government has a responsibility to ensure that there is no cheating in the Hajj, there is no crookery in the Hajj, there is no exploitation of people in the Hajj, there's no price gouging in the Hajj. On the other hand, if, for example, we face a situation like this, where the referee also plays, where the regulator also wants to be the operator, that would activate whether the competition commission comes in. Because then the competition commission must decide whether there is a conflict of interest between the regulator and the operator, whether the conditions are being set for a monopoly, whether the conditions are being set for collusion on pricing, and all of those kind of things. And so those are the various aspects of the Hajj. Government has a responsibility on consular, it has a responsibility on consumer issues, and it has a responsibility for economic fairness within it, but it sometimes is too cautious about whether it transgresses into the religious affairs, and so it is that caution which I think is holding us back. And so,
I have two follow-ups to that, and I'll come to you, Jakes Rawat, in just a bit. Of course, he's from Hajj Watch. The Ambassador Rasool, the understanding here that SAHUC is a regulator, for the longest time, that is the sort of terminology and description that we've used. From the investigations that you've done and the inquiries that you've made, is that the description that you are left with? Is the one bit of the question. The other bit of the question relates, to, I suppose, in just by way of playing devil's advocate here and representing what could be a SAHUC argument, and that is that price gouging, price fixing, exploitation of the pilgrims has been a very common practice within this industry by operators. Operators without SAHUC's presence would have continued had there not been, a some sort of a role that they played in trying to hold operators accountable and ensuring that there's some sort of baseline of rules that apply in the administration of the Hajj. And so, just by way of then placing that as a counter to saying, could SAHUC administrating the Hajj also from an operator's perspective, could that lead, to, the very same thing, I suppose, is what remains to be seen. But I want to maybe just put that as a counter as well to what you had to say.
No, look, I think that we use the term very broadly, that SAHUC as regulator, but that is because to a large extent, government has allowed a body that was not interested in the money-making parts of the Hajj to be able to manage the Hajj. And so SAHUC played that role, and therefore in our report, we speak about the need for a SAHUC-type body that is there with greater government involvement so that the regulatory aspects, and we even understood that there may be the need for laws and regulations which now deal with a more complex situation. But SAHUC played that role as a Pilgrims Affairs office and therefore should not be transgressing into the operational role if it is that. And that's precisely one of the strengths of SAHUC, that it does due diligence on operators. It weeds out those who have stolen money, who have run off with money, have not met their obligations, and that is absolutely critical that they must be able to do it and to enforce certain of those laws. But price gouging and collusion happens under two conditions. One is that there have been rogue operators, and that's what must be weeded out. But on the other hand, collusion happens, in the opinion of the committee that I chaired, happens when you reduce the number of operators from about 36 to 6, because it is easier to collude amongst 6 operators about what price benchmarks they're putting, rather than, for example, 36, where competition amongst them can have the effect, inshallah, of driving down the prices. And so Malaysia, for example, says that they will only allow an operator X number of Hujjaj, meaning that if you reach that number, you don't take on any more Hujjaj, so that you don't monopolize the number of Hujjaj, and you create an even platform of honest operators, and they compete for prices for Hujjaj within that. And they then are in turn managed financially by the Tabung Haji or the government's Pilgrim Affairs Office, which is the role that SAHUC should be playing. So there are ways in which collusion, monopolization, and price gouging happens, and sometimes it happens by weeding out too much the operators and limiting the numbers, whereas you could be allowing more numbers and more competition.
Okay, let's bring in Jakes Rawat to this discussion now. Assalamu alaikum to you, brother. Lovely to have you on the program once again. So all of this that now had, certainly sparked the protests and the litigation and so on and so forth is on account of what SAHUC says are new rules that were issued by the Hajj Ministry. There seems to be a contestation about the understanding of what those rules are that leads SAHUC to believe that they will be the ones that's going to be administrating the travel as well and the entire bits of the pilgrimage beyond the scope of work that they've been doing, certainly for the last couple of years. What is Hajj Watch's understanding about the changes and whether, in fact, the interpretation thereof is that SAHUC is the responsible party to administer Hajj affairs?
Okay, I think we just need to start from the beginning. I mean, SAHUC's been in existence for nearly 30 years, right? And the problem we have in South Africa is that here's a body constituted itself but has no legal authority. And the South African government has allowed these people to operate, right, without any legal cover. So they are not a regulator. They have no government intervention, and they report to no one except themselves. And the pilgrims, the Hujjaj, are being disadvantaged to such an extent that they have no say in the running of the organizations. This organization says it's represented by other Muslim organizations that have no elections. And who are these people that are going to be sitting on SAHUC? So the government of South Africa has subcontracted this messy business of Hajj to SAHUC, but don't take responsibility for their actions. So we have a body that what Ambassador Rasool calls a Pilgrims Affairs Office without any legislation, dishing out rules and regulations for pilgrims to adhere to or don't go for Hajj. I mean, that is a constitutional matter. You cannot legislate things for Muslims, but you have no authority. In a Pilgrims Affairs Office, you need authority. Somebody has to give you authority. So SAHUC is not even known in the kingdom. SAHUC cannot produce a single document that has their name, South African Hajj and Umrah Council, hereby contracts with the Saudi authorities. It doesn't exist. And we've been misled, and Hajj Watch has highlighted this a long time ago, that there is no such thing. So our government is liable. What Ambassador Rasool says, which I agree, those are things that he would like to see. His report is going to say, these are the actions that we would like to see happen. But right now, this Muslim community is being misled by an organization that he says they're not into money. They've got lots of millions in reserves, making money and want to make more money now and enter the Hajj business. I mean, this is ludicrous. And
let me understand, is your argument that they need to be accorded with legal authority, the absence of which cannot justify their role as a supposed regulator, as well as raising questions about what level of constituency they have to be able to, anoint themselves almost as this quasi-regulator of Hajj affairs, and to the point where then you raise a question about whether to begin with, aside from whether there are new rules and this monopoly that could be created, that you believe that SAHUC doesn't hold any sort of legitimacy. Is that the argument that you're making?
Precisely. For you to be able to get the community, to get Muslims of this country to say, if you want to go for Hajj, you've got to apply to me. Where is that rule or law that makes it mandatory on every Muslim that wants to go for Hajj to go to SAHUC? Please show me. I mean, Ambassador Rasool can bear me out here. There is nothing. So the point of the matter is we need to make hold our government to account and not to treat us as special people. You know, we have enough laws in this country that protects our rights. But to introduce something that is ungoverned, not legislated, and do as they please. Now they want to change the constitution. They want to be able to be a Hajj operator. I mean, how does this happen? For example, in terms of just their operational, you know, their finances, who do they report those to? To their own membership. That is not how organizations work. And this is what we as Hajj Watch have been saying for years, that the legitimacy and government is giving them cover. And that is the problem. There's no amount of CRL involvement that's going to change it, because there is no legislation that authorizes them to prevent me from going for Hajj. And as a Muslim, that's unacceptable.
Yeah. Moulana, I'm going to come to you just now. I just want to quickly pivot back to Ambassador Rasool. In your investigation, did you establish, look, I mean, you can only play God if you have some degree of influence and power, and this is tested, according to my understanding, through the communication and the proximity that SAHUC has to the Hajj ministry, and them being viewed as some sort of a pilgrim affairs office of whatever sort, right, to the ministry. I don't even know what the ministry understands SAHUC's role to be, and maybe you can clarify that for us. But the question that I want to just quickly follow up on from what Jake said to say there is whether SAHUC is the recipient of the collective quantum of visas, and whether by the criteria that SAHUC sets out, it then makes those visas available to operators. This is now before the supposed new rules. And it is then a prerequisite, you know, to be compliant on this, that, and the other, that operators would then get the visas, which they would then be able to make available to the pilgrim who is paying the operator the sum of money to facilitate the travel to Hajj. And so the document that is crucial, that is the commodity here, is the visa, and that is the sort of sway that I would understand SAHUC to have. And this, of course, also deals with the issue that I think Jake raises about the individual pilgrim that may want to undertake the Hajj but doesn't want to go through this quasi-appointed regulator. You know, some would say self-appointed, some say without legitimacy. I think I've given enough space for that argument. But I just want to understand, you know, the issue around visa control and it becoming available in the South African market. Who has that level of control?
So I think that the first thing that we must understand is that from a position of almost unlimited Hujjaj that we used to have to a very constricted number, because we have dramatically fallen to 2,500 quota. We were 30 years ago at about 20,000. We were then 8,000. But the less the number of visas are, the more the contestation enters. And that's what our committee said requires government, particularly we heard Hajj Watch, when we had our hearings, we heard them, and we then indicated that what we require is enabling legislation for a Pilgrims Affairs Office, a SAHUC, we call it a SAHUC type organization that has direct government representation on it, whether it is a Hajj envoy or a special consul general empowered to do that. But that is what the Saudis want to negotiate with. They want to negotiate with government and not with a anomaly, because SAHUC is an anomaly in the constellation of Pilgrims Affairs officers. In Malaysia and others who are Muslim countries, it's government that is the interface with the Saudis. Here it is a non-government organization, and we have said that requires legislation to enable it, and secondly, regulations to govern it. I think increasingly with the Nusuk system, we are going to have individuals who can go and online and book, but that will be very much an elite, and we will continue to have the bleeding out of the very poor for Hajj. They're already being prohibited by exorbitant prices. I think we don't want them to be also prohibited by technology. And therefore, what we have, and unfortunately, government has not acted on this since more than a year ago when we had put our reports to them. And now the crisis is hitting us. But I think that what we need is that enabling legislation that tells each component what their role is, regulates all of that. We even go so far, Jakes, to say that there should be annual financial statements on the Hajj presented via the CRL to Parliament, where SAHUC and others must be able to present their books to Parliament to be able to look at it.
Yeah. All right, Moulana, thanks for your patience. Of course, there's lots to get through. So you've now instituted litigation against SAHUC. In summary, what are you asking the courts to pronounce on?
What we have done thus far, we have wrote letters by our attorneys to SAHUC saying that, listen, we don't accept this regulator process to a business. We have made our standpoint clear on this, that yes, as a regulator, we supported you, but we don't want to go any more further in where it is a business and you change your constitution. The fact that you're changing your constitution tells you that your initial purpose is now being changed. You're basically wanting to do something else. So it clearly shows now that why you were created and now what you're wanting to do is two different things now. So when we said this, and when we obviously voiced our opinion, it seems so now to the SAHUC board that we have committed a crime. And how we have committed the crime is by basically being the voice of the voiceless and being the voice of the Hujjaj and the interest of the Hujjaj to say, listen, we're not going to support this. And then if you become the business operator, then who regulates you and who checks you and who takes your checks and balances? And as the SJU, we are not a business partner. We can't be a business partner or entity to a business. So this is when we said no. And we were thinking that people, SAHUC would come to negotiate or come to consult. When I say negotiate, I mean to come and consult with us, come and talk to us, come and say to us as founding members, no, we appreciate your presence of your organization from founding stages, but we'd like to explain you. We'd like to tell you that this is what, it was not a consultative process. So we then decided that, yes, whatever it is, even the invite that they sent us for the amendment of the Constitution, our members went, who was going to obviously oppose this. But we were suspended in the morning of the meeting. And, I don't think even government suspend their members like how we got suspended in this entire thing. And probably a disciplinary hearing is going to take place now. Now we became the element of where we've now wanting to do the wrong things. But we're saying that, yes, if it means us go and seek relief from the court, then by all means we're going to do this here, because obviously our interest is the Hujjaj. Ultimately, we're not interested. We don't have time to go and run a business or be accountable to a business or look at financial statements of a business. We don't have the time. It's a theologian body. We keep it strictly as a theologian to represent the masses, and that's how we want to do this here. And yes, I totally agree from the two panelists before me that are speaking here. I don't think the government has anything to say about how we must perform Hajj and whatever. They have left it and to the religious people to deal with this, and it's a democratic country. But coming to, yes, how we wanting to do this here and asking ourselves, yes, how are we going to put this together? And I think, even if I'm just saying in inverted commas, that if they were wanting to do this, it should have been 1 or 2 years to consult with the necessary things, not just after the Hajj come, lay a earthquake down to South Africa and say, listen, this is what the process is going to be. Like you're saying, everyone must liquidate, close, and now if you want to go for Hajj, there's only one door that you have to enter, and that door is SAHUC, otherwise you can't go for Hajj. I don't think this is something that we would look at. And there are many other religious, if I start a religious debate here now, which I don't want to start a religious debate in terms of how they probably already transgress the jurisprudence of Islam while they took some decisions while they were in the kingdom of Saudi Arabia, of the Adai and the Qurbani of this. I don't even want to go on this, but our officers, I engaged with many of those queries, and I honestly, I want to keep it academic here. I don't want to go to a religious point of view with this here. And I also look at it, yes, that the consultative process of wanting to know, yes, how could we solve this problem and how could we look forward to this problem? And if I hear the financial part, as the ambassador has respectfully said this, and our representative from Hajj Watch, and then when I brought this issue up in one of the debates, I think a couple of weeks ago, I was told on the debate the next day or something that it was not during day running period, it was before them. But the fact it is your organization, the root of your organization. So when it's going to go into business now, this changes everything to us, and everyone's asking us. Yesterday I've had calls from Cape Town, I have calls from Johannesburg, I had calls from different organizations, and people that were in the constitution change that called us and said, why did you take this approach? What do you know that we don't know? We said, no, listen, the only thing that we want to do is we don't want to support a business. We don't want to support a tour operator. And if you speak about Hujjaj keeping prices high, then I ask myself a question again. They were the regulator. Am I not? If you look at the industry of Hajj, I think Hajj Watch can share a lot of information on this here. When an agent takes a package out, he sends it to SAHUC first. SAHUC approves the package, and then only they advertise the package. But probably they can't ask the agent to make it a low package, because how will they get the travel agent fees? How they will get this one? So you ask yourself, what was the interest here? If you're saying no, that they're doing this because the travel agents were having exorbitant price, but you were the regulator. You were the person that had full control of this. Now, if you're going to become the business operator now and you're going to be a tour operator, I'm sure DIRCO is not going to have a time to deal with a tour operator. DIRCO is not going to have a chance to obviously listen to the tour operator and the price and the inflation. We have many issues in government and in South Africa to look at and go about. They're not going to sit with the Islamic part of Hajj and say, listen, as the ambassador said, they involve in a counselor service. And from my interaction, the little interaction that I had with DIRCO, it doesn't give me any indication that they gave them the mandate of this year. And if you
sorry, Moulana, just to come in there, because I am running out of time, and I know I did give some of the other panelists quite a bit of time to explain, but I just want to understand, as a founding member, as somebody that attended the meetings up until the time you got suspended, and as a party now that is seeking to litigate to seek relief from the courts, what is the Sunni Jamiat Ulema's understanding about, the Nusuk system, and whether or not it is in fact, as SAHUC represents it now, that look, the debate is whether the Saudis want one, point of office, an organization to facilitate all of these things. I want to understand whether that is the rule, or whether the contention is that it is not for SAHUC to play that part, because SAHUC has traditionally aligned and paraded itself as a regulator, and you cannot have a regulator now also playing in the same field, as an operator, which now, of course, we understand the complexities of that argument. So I want to just, for clarity, for understanding, for the sake of understanding, does the Saudis, according to the information that you are privy to, do they now require there to be one entity responsible for the administration of Hajj here in South Africa? What role the Nusuk system plays in any of that, and whether your contention is that if that is the case, right, that SAHUC is the party as the regulator that it shouldn't be playing that role? Because then we can understand the conversation to be, okay, yes, those are the rules, but not SAHUC, or those are the rules, but maybe SAHUC in this particular iteration. I just want clarity on that regard.
If you look at this thing in terms of SAHUC, it cannot be a regulator, and it cannot be a player and a referee at the same time. And this is where I think many of us are not understanding that you can't do both together. Then if you ask yourself a question, is that if the Nusuk app is going to take more people to the kingdom in terms of the 70,000 people that have registered currently now, 70,000 people, some of them may be already passed on. They're probably still sitting with their fees and whatever it is. 70,000 people that are still waiting to go for Hajj. And I don't believe 2,500 and 3,000 is the right process that they negotiated. And I'm sure you have your representative here who's chaired the Ministerial Committee. I'm sure they met with the ministry, and I'm sure there was much more offered to South Africa. There was much more given to South Africa. And I'm saying, if the Nusuk system is in the interest of the Hujjaj, then by all means, it must be the Nusuk system by the interest of the Hujjaj. Yeah, our argument is based on not anything. I don't want to see what is the profit and loss. It must be the interest of the Hujjaj, and anything that is in the interest of Hujjaj, by all means, if the Nusuk system takes a lot of people to a Hajj and better and it's efficient, Alhamdulillah, let it be so. But currently now, I don't think that going forward with the business plan, SAHUC is going to be the people that are. What is the experience that they have? What is the experience that they have? Do they have this experience from a regulator to a business? I don't think that this is something that's going to work.
All right, let's Jakes come to you quickly, and then Ambassador Rasool, I'll end off with you. And I want to understand. I think we've dealt with questions about what government's understanding is. We've dealt with the questions around legitimacy and how SAHUC is structured, etc. I would have loved to have had SAHUC's participation in the panel, but of course, as they've indicated, because the matter is being litigated, they are cautioning themselves not to participate. So we are unable to get their perspectives to this discussion. But moving forward, in the current sort of grey area about the administration of Hajj affairs here from South Africa, what is your understanding, Jakes, about whether there is a rule change, and whether that rule change, you believe cannot have SAHUC be appointed or have themselves self-appointed as now the new one organization operator that will exist, or whether the rules are what they are, but it's just that SAHUC cannot do it. I want to understand if there's a distinction there between the two, and how you think moving forward this issue can be dealt with. If you can conclude on that note as well, please. Jakes? Yeah, I think your mic is muted. Jakes, I'm not certain if you can hear me, but your mic appears to be muted. We see you talking, but you are muted at the moment. Okay, I'm not certain if you can't hear me, but let's go to you, Ambassador Rasool. A similar question, what is understood by whether this is the new dispensation, and is the question then that SAHUC perhaps shouldn't be the party or the entity or the organization, responsible for playing a regulator and operator at the same time? I want to understand this distinction, and again, moving forward, is your recommendation still that there must be a Pilgrim Affairs office to which there is some sort of government collaboration in administrating these consular affairs?
I think, Tashriq, that our recommendation comes out of our negotiations with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, its Hajj ministry. And we basically said that the Nusuk system, we understand, will be for the long term, but South Africa needs a dispensation that allows a hybrid, meaning that those who can go on the Nusuk system and those who need operators and SAHUC can coexist, because we have a limited quota and many prospective Hujjaj. And therefore, we can't have all our eggs in one system. Secondly, we are saying that a Pilgrims Affairs Office may need to be established with deeper government involvement this time, but that legislation and regulations must be there, as I've explained earlier. My understanding is, and I'm having a meeting later today with the CRL Commission, and we have, for example, found the minutes of SAHUC's July 10 NGC, and very clearly the Saudis did not give them a one-option approach, become the regulator and the operator. They were in fact given 3 options, one of which is SAHUC also becomes the operator. The others is how does SAHUC coexist with the Nusuk system and with operators. They voted in majority to become the sole operator, got a legal opinion, and then decided to then change their constitution based on that legal opinion. So I think it's a decision that they have made, and this is now hopefully the wake-up call for government to say, we're not asking you to interfere in the religious affairs of Muslims, but you must make sure that the regulatory, consular, and economic implications, particularly on the issues of the Competition Commission, those things need to be sorted out. And hopefully in the next few days, as this thing unfolds, I think government should play its responsibility towards its citizens, not particularly as Muslims, but what would we do when any entity violates or potentially violates competition rules, when any citizens face this kind of job losses that could come, for example, just by wiping out operators. What are the kind of things that need to be done? So I think SAHUC had a choice. They made a choice, and they've changed their constitution in accordance with their choice.
Okay, and they, of course, now receiving the backlash accordingly. Thank you very much, Ambassador Rasool. Looking forward to hear the outcome of your meetings with the CRL Commission. Jakes, we have you back, but we are now really pressed for time. So in a minute or so, as Ambassador Rasool clarified there, so they were presented with 3 options. They went with the option that allows them to be regulator as well as operator. And, you know, whatever you make of that, it's a choice that they've made, which of course now is subject to litigation. And I wonder, as Hajj Watch, it's party to this and looking at this entire matter, how do you believe, you know, we now move forward from this? How do we approach it? What do you think is the way to go?
You're talking to me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yes, I can hear you. Very quickly, please.
Okay. I think the issue is that there's no consultation, the bottom line. And for us to go forward, we need to put our heads together. I mean, the classic case that SAHUC doesn't want to be here shows us the kind of way they treat this community and they treat the Muslim Ummah. That if they were really interested in not opening a business, but running and worrying about Hujjaj, they'd be here. And this is what it's about. We have to all stand together and have better outcomes. And the outcome that we want is a more pleasant journey, you know, than what we have at the moment.
Yeah, let's hope, inshallah, that we can find greater clarity around these issues. Thank you very much for your time on the program this morning. Jakes Rawat, of course, he is from Hajj Watch, talking to us there this morning. Ambassador Ebrahim Rasool, who has been involved in investigating matters of Hajj dispensation in South Africa, having gone to Saudi Arabia, including talking to the South African government and the CRL Commission and others. They've made recommendations before, and he participated, of course, in our panel here this morning. That's why he was on the program. And of course, Moulana Mohammed Tariq from the Sunni Ulama. Let me just confirm, sorry, because I know there's like different Sunni Ulama organizations. The Sunni Jamiat Ulema is an executive member there, of course, also having joined us this morning.
This podcast is brought to you by Radio 786.